Welcome back to another Agency Connect podcast. I'm Sunir Shah, CEO of AppBind, president of the Cloud Software Association. I'm here with Danny Gavin from Houston. He's the founder of Optidge Internet Marketing Agency, and I think he has one of the more interesting stories because he's done what we often recommend as an agency is go find someone who's an expert in agencies and help you out. So how could I not have him on? That'd be crazy. It would be crazy, wouldn't it, Danny? Why don't you introduce
It
yourself
would.
and why you're less crazy than I am? Tell us all about your agency.
Hey, Sunir. So nice to be here. Thank you so much. So yeah, I'm Danny. I'm the founder and CEO of Optidge, which is a full service digital marketing agency. And we work with established businesses in the B2B and B2C realm, primarily in lead generation efforts versus, let's say, e-commerce. And yeah, we've been around for 5 years as an agency. I've been consulting since 2010, but as an agency, we started in 2017, and we've been growing year over year really nicely. And just I have an absolute joy of working in this field and really mentoring my employees. Pretty a side note, I'm actually a professor of digital marketing at the University of Houston, and one of my key recruitment strategies has been that most of my full-time employees are students of mine for my classes. I've been able to kind of like cherry pick the best of the best and have really created an awesome team that I really enjoy working with every single day.
Yeah, you're like a real expert. Let's not undersell you. And I think one of the things that we try to cover with this podcast series is for a lot of agencies. Some are more experienced than others who are like really professional agencies, and some are just ended up being an agency because that's how life hit them, and they're scrambling to figure it out. You actually kind of have kind of both experiences, is that you were consulting and became an agency, but then you also brought in an expert of agencies to help you out, which is, I think, the smartest thing to do is to always find someone to coach you. In business, life is like business is full of challenges. It's good to have outside perspectives. So tell us about this story. Like what was happening? Was this 2021? Like tell us what was happening before you the change happened and you met this person.
Yeah, so like I said, we started 2017. It was me and another person, and you start working, start growing. You need to hire like your next person. I think like we were 3 months in, hired our next person. The end of that year of 2017, we hired our next person, and as it goes, it's just growing and growing, very natural. Thank God our business primarily referral based, as I imagine a lot of agencies are. So it keeps, it's grows and grows. So, but it got to a point where it was, I have a large family. I have a lot of things that I do, and staying up till 4 or 5 in the morning every single night just doesn't. It's going to catch up with you eventually. I mean, I enjoy it, but still, it's like it gets to a point, and you get tired. So I knew that I needed help, and at that point, I was making a decent profit, but it's like, what's it's a choice here. Like, do I want to make all this profit, or do I want to also like enjoy my life and be able to like do things and just have a normal day. So I knew that I needed something. I didn't know what. So as the story goes, there was a social network there for a little bit around the pandemic time called Clubhouse, and I was in a room with my really good friend Moshe Poltrak, who he ran a room for just marketing professionals, networking and helping people find jobs. So I was there talking, and then walks into this room this lady, Leah Leaves, and she introduces herself as a fractional COO for digital marketing agencies. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, like I didn't even know that exists. Let's check that out. So I got her information, and we spoke, and understood what she did. And at first it was a little scary. Like, this is someone who kind of have to be like really open and transparent, and really kind of open everything so that she can come in and really analyze the situation and see, okay, where are we going wrong? Where are you going right? Danny, like, these are all the 50 million things that you do that you shouldn't be doing. How can we redirect? And yeah, so I think we started off like a 3 month contract, and now it's been almost 2 years, and it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made because it's helped me become a better agency owner. It's also allowed me to create better systems and processes, make it hopefully a better environment for my employees as well. So overall, it's been miraculous, I would say.
That's great. And we've heard this before. I mean, Graziana Media, like they have a CFO come in every quarter. It's good to have outside experience come in because it's a business, right? It's not a treadmill, which is where I was trying to get to with this podcast. Um, so, we always ask these kind of shaping questions, but because you have a before and after, I'd be curious if you do like a before and after version of it, like where you were in 2021 and where you are now. Um, so like just basic questions about what kind of like where you are as an agency and maturity, so other people know relative to where they are, where you were at. First, like how many staff do you have right now?
Sure. So we have around 10, 11 full time, and then we have like 10, I don't want to say full time contractors, but you get my point, like more contractors. So we're about a team of 20,
Wow.
which is pretty large. And back then, I think, the before was we were about half of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then who like what's your typical client profile look like?
Yeah. So, that's been an interesting process. But for us, it's kind of like, at that time it was like anything under the sun, right? For
Yeah.
me it was the hardest thing, to not help someone, even though it might not be helping myself. But now where we've kind of transformed to is we don't really like startups, we don't really like corporate companies. It's more like those established medium-sized businesses that we do really well with. And typically it's going to be, like I said, more on the lead gen side than on the e-commerce side.
Mhm.
So so we deal with SaaS, healthcare, service-based businesses. From that point, we haven't niched down, but for like the type, the size, and the feel, and the type, that's pretty much our sweet spot.
We have this question that I've learned recently, last year, but it's a good one. Like, do you know what your turn-away rate is? And which is how many, like, what percentage of the clients that come to you that you say no to?
Ooh. So first of all, just that whole transition was crazy.
Yeah.
So we have kept track of it. I don't know the number offhand, but it does feel like, I would say, like the gut feel right now is at least 50%, if not more.
Ah, that's
So
amazing.
one out of
Yeah.
so 1 out of 2, we're just saying, this is not going to work.
Yeah. We found it was like 20-25% minimum in order to survive a downturn in the economy. It's interesting how that is not a key indicator for most people, but it's actually really important. I mean, at the
And so again, if
beginning, yeah, but
and if you think about it, it's hard, especially now, like 2023. We don't know what's going on, so like to really push away people that potentially could bring you, revenue, to push them away sometimes seems counterintuitive. But on the other hand, it's like, ooh, if they're not a good fit, it's going to suck money out of you. It's going to just change everything. So it's hard to realize that. It takes some maturity and time, but when you can get to that point, it's truly powerful.
yeah, like, well, the problem is like revenue is payroll, which is a liability in this business. So you have to control revenue. So it's quality revenue that you're not forced to hire people that you're going to have to let go. And if you're right at the edge, you have no buffer to keep great people. I know it's part of your story about how you keep the buffer to keep your people. Well, let's finish the last few questions on shaping, and then I always ask this question as of like 3 podcasts ago because it's a great question we just came up with. Do you systematically put money away for yourself as an owner, which seems to be the magical question about whether you have reached nirvana or not?
Yeah, and so I'm not going to take credit for this. I think, I've been married now for almost 15 years, and my wife, is a big believer about saving. So I think, as our relationship has, grew, and it became a real foundation of our family, of our lives. So naturally, that would move over to the businesses or things that I'm involved with. So yes, Optidge started officially back in 2011. And at that point, it was more of a single man consultancy and did work. But since 2011, I have put away profits. And what that practically means is you don't leave it in the company bank account, but you actually take that out and you put it into your personal accounts. And that's something that I do every single year. Obviously, some years are more, some years are less, but the goal is that you want to take that out. And I think the point that you like to get to, Sunir, is that the business is structured that way. Like, I want to make sure that every month I have a goal to create that value, to create that profit, so that it's there, right? If I only thought about it in December, like, oh, like, Where's the money, right? But if I create the systems and processes and the goals and the budget that I need that buffer every single month, then yes, at the end of the year, that revenue, that distribution will be allowed to, it's possible to make it.
Yes. I mean, I wish I knew all these things when I was younger, but we do this to learn these conversations. Okay, so we usually ask about your commercials, but I think that was a part of your story because they changed from before you met the COO to now. So let's talk about that. So what was the shape of the business before you met? Sorry, what was her name? Leah?
Leia.
Leia. Before you met Leia, um, and what was like? What was the like? Were you like? What was the pain that you were in at that time that you needed her to come in?
Yeah. So imagine, like, here I am in every single client call. I'm doing the proposals. I'm doing the accounting. I'm doing the finance. I'm doing the mentoring of my employees. Like, if they have a problem, they're coming to me. And also just the way I solve problems, not always would I say, hey, this is how you do it, but it's more like I would just take over and say, and like just fix it. So literally it was like I created a structure where there was no way for this agency to last without me, because I'm literally, my hand is in every part of it. And I love it. Like, it's my baby. I want to help people. So it's coming from a good place, but it's kind of the situation is that, like, I'm spread thin, and there's just only so many hours in the day that you have.
Interesting. Did you have standard operating procedures documented this time, or
We had some, but not really.
do you have them now?
Yes, we do.
That's funny. It's the same. Yeah. Anyway, and so Leia comes in, and she goes, "Danny, what up?" So what happens? What does she go immediately do?
So I think the best part, like, so the intro is kind of like, Danny, like, the things that I'm going to tell you now, like, they're gonna hurt. Like, it's gonna be hard. This is not gonna be easy, but you need to try to have an open mind. If you're not gonna have an open mind, like, you can still challenge me. Like, you know, please challenge me, but you need to have an open mind, because if you're not gonna be open, like, you're not gonna be able to change, and this is not going to work. And there were times where it's like, oh my gosh, my soul and everything's telling me this is not what I want to do, but I'm going to do it because you're telling me that if I do get past this hill, this mountain, it's going to be better for me. And that's what it was, like, week by week, month by month, finding those things that to me seemed like an impossible challenge. How am I ever going to be able to delegate this? And then slowly, okay, I climbed that mountain, and then moving on to the next and the next.
Would you have an example of that? I think these are good lessons.
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's just talk about being in every single client meeting. Um,
Oh yes.
it was number one, it's like telling the, so first of all, it was for every single client creating ownership. Okay, there might be 3 different departments, but you know what? We need one owner. So who's it going to be? Is it going to be the paid search lead on this account, the SEO lead? We literally went through every single account and created who's the owner. And that's important, right? And then in addition to that, we saw, okay, well, now sometimes it doesn't make sense for the paid search strategist to be the account lead, because, like, they should really be spending their time on doing actual paid search work. So then we brought in the idea of, okay, we need account managers, client account managers, and hiring those people. And so kind of going through like those couple steps, then it's like, okay, we've created a system, and okay, I'm going to be in a meeting, but I guess, guys, I'm not going to be in every meeting now. Why don't you guys try to do it? Maybe I'll be there at least once a month or twice a month, and then slowly just pulling myself away. And when you do it like ripping off a band-aid, sometimes that's good, but in this case, I don't think it would have been a good situation, because when, like, Danny's always there and then he's suddenly not, like, that's like a shock to the system. But when we did it slowly in a methodical way, it worked well.
I'm I know the feeling. Like, yeah. So I worked at an agency first that we had overloaded the number of clients, and then the owner was in like a lot of the client conversations, and then he just all of a sudden I was actually a subcontractor working on analytics only, I thought, amplitude implementations, and then suddenly I was here owning a client, and I was like, I didn't sign up for this. I had just had my third child too. I was like, oh, like, she was like weeks old, and I'm like, why am I project managing this client? It was a valuable experience, and I often talk about how I got fired by a client in that project. not because of that. It was actually because of the subscriptions. Go figure. Hence AppBind, where I couldn't buy the subscriptions, and it was just he loved me because I was project managing, but I couldn't actually do any of my actual work because I couldn't get any of the technology. Hence AppBind. But like the experience of the client was chaos, right? Like you can't just go from who am I talking to, right? But conversely, for my other business, which is the Cloud Software Association, I hired a managing director who's awesome, Lindsay. And then she was like trying to like follow my lead. Is like, nope, you're the boss now. And I say every meeting, I said, you're the boss. I work for you. And then my job was to support her. And as I mean, she's a rock star, right? So she was willing to take it on and ownership, but I was there to support her. And then because she was leading it, I was able to naturally let it go. But it's terrifying, isn't it? Like to like give up the client, like the customer, because that's like where your money's coming from.
It's crazy. And when you think about it, like first of all, you have to realize to comes to term with once you delegate something to someone else, it's not going to be 100% the way that you would do it.
No.
So you have to come to terms with that. And you realize that when I hand it off, the best it could ever be is 80%, right? Technically. So you have to come to terms with that. And then once you do, it's a lot easier to hand off, but it is scary. Like, man, if this client's paying me $8,000, and if I'm not on this call and they get angry and they're going to, fire us, like that hurts. So yeah, it's definitely not easy.
Did you have any trouble like this at the beginning, or was it all just your own neuroses and fear?
My own neuroses and my own things that just came to me. And really,
Wow.
if you trust your staff and you instill that confidence in them and you've taught them what to do, and you still have that open door policy where, if they have a situation, they can come to you, it works. And that's the cool thing. Like, this works and it can be done.
Like, this is a bit of digression, but it's really key. I mean, agencies are people. Your product is people, and people are still human beings. How do you find these great, emotionally mature people? Like, I think that's a really difficult problem for agencies.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, I have a little bit of a trick because I'm at the university and I've been there now for 7 years. I'm actually starting my 15th semester this evening. Um, yeah, I've been able to find just a certain style of person, who, they're going to graduate school. They're either getting their MBA or a master's in marketing. Certain type of individual who cares about higher education and getting to the next level and is motivated. Most of these people are working, um, and learning at the same time. And it's just been wonderful to be able to kind of have a classroom of people to choose from and see who I think would be a good option. Now, it hasn't always worked. I've hired some students of mine that haven't worked out, so I don't have a perfect record, but more often than not, it's been good. So how do you relate that to just your average agency? It's tough. Like, like, let's say when I don't have students available, and what do I do? It's really it's difficult. But I feel like, you know I think every agency needs to have the qualities that are really important to them, and you're not going to be able to get everything. And if you can try to match that, you're going to be good. So, like, for us, like, someone being very passionate about this, it's so important, especially when you have a remote agency. And that's a whole nother topic, but being passionate, being excited, wanting to do more, um, being a self-starter, these sort of things are like the must. And then it's like, do they really need the SEO experience? Do they really need the Google Ads experience? We can teach them that, but can I teach them that organization, that passion, that accountability? It's a little bit harder. So it's funny because it's a little bit counterintuitive. It's like, do I hire for the skills, or do I hire for like the innate characteristics that this person has? And I suggest, or I could recommend, it's more about those innate abilities that someone has rather than do they really know SEO or PPC.
Well, can I tell you something personal and reflect back the truth, maybe to you slightly?
Sure.
Organizations follow their leaders. I mean, it's been apparent to me that perhaps you exhibit these values, these positive characteristics, so it's easy for you to attract positive people. like the fact that you're even open to having COO, the fact that your staff were, and we talked about this off camera, but like we're willing to challenge you, that you had you had overloaded them, and they could do that without fear, maybe as indication of you, and therefore you get attract people with similar values, right? And I think that's one of the lessons I've learned a long time ago is like, we're all anxious, we're all neurotic, but we have to accept these fears are human, and to tell your staff to like hide it from your staff is actually sad. I mean, they're adults too. They can help you out. We're all on the same pirate boat together. And having a company that's open, surprisingly, is a lot easier to work with, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive for people, but you're right. And thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure. Okay, so let's talk about off that nice, sweet moment. Back to business. Money. So tell me about tell me about your commercials. Now we're here. So you reorganize the company, which we'll get to how you structure it. But like, what are the commercials that you offer your clients? Are you retainers? Are you hourly? God help you if you are you like what? How are you structuring with clients?
So it really depends on the service line, but in general, the soul and the heart and soul of the company is retainer based. So clients pay us a certain amount of money on an ongoing basis, and with that comes a certain amount of deliverables. When you deal more with like the advertising side, we have minimums or percentages. So that means that we always make that minimum, but if their ad spend goes up over a certain amount of time, then it switches to a percentage model. And then, from an SEO perspective, it's more about deliverable based. So like we'll have like 3 or 4 options that you can pay per month. And then at each level, it's going to change the amount of work that we're doing. Now, sometimes, we do consulting. So sometimes there are some like minimum retainers, like, okay, they're going to pay $5,000 for 40 hours a month. And so it just depends. But I would say our key lifeline is or are those retainers. And therefore we have a set amount of revenue that we're relying upon month over month. I don't know how these agencies that like do web design and like are looking for projects and new websites, it must be really hard to manage because the cash flow is a lot more, it's up and down.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely strategies, but it's more of a volume thing most of the time. And like, so how many clients do you carry at any given time? It's usually what we ask at the beginning.
Yeah, so we're at about 50 to 60 right now.
So like 3 to 1 ratio. Is that right? 20 staff, three clients. That's
Yeah.
That's actually not too bad overall. And then how long do your clients stick with you? You would say on average.
I think our average now is somewhere between. I mean, so it's only been like 5 years, but I would say our average is about 2 years.
It's not too bad. How many clients would you say churn out within the first year?
Ooh. I feel like we have a churn rate of like, I don't know if it's somewhere between 10 to 20%.
That's pretty good.
So
SEO
it's
is a
like
pretty high
people who have
churn
joined.
package. That's the SEO is hard because it's long term.
So people,
right? Yeah.
yeah. So people who have joined and then left in the same year, I feel like it's somewhere between 10 to 20, maybe less.
That's good. That's really good. And then like any because one way, so you've structured yourself with multiple kinds of productized service, like package services, like SEO, PPC, or whatever. Do clients come in for one and then switch to the other, or are you selling them the whole thing all at once? Like how do you quote
Oh
them?
no. Some come in for more, some come in for one, but obviously a big strategy of ours is upselling,
Yeah, no.
right? It's a heck of a lot easier to get an existing client to spend more with you than to get a new one. So, when we create our sort of revenue goals or the goals that we need to reach, part of it is like new business, but a big part of it is like upsells. And like I remember in our, we do an annual meeting in December where we look at, back at the past year and what we accomplished. And I think looking at the revenue from upsells was just like I couldn't believe it. Like it was a pretty significant amount of the total new revenue that we created. And that was just based off of some, talking about upsells in the end of 2021. It's like, guys, we got to do this. And we actually did. So it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I'm learning I had an inkling was this, but like clients actually, the work is nice, but they actually buy trust, and it's so hard for a client to trust anybody. If they trust you, then it's easy to get them to say yes to more work because you're the only ones they could secretly tell their whole fears to. Because they can't tell their staff, they can't tell their business partners or their customers. You're their therapist, right? And so they're going to stick with you. And then how
And you know what's
many?
the best? Like
Go
I
on.
just have an oh, I just want to have an example. So we have an example of one of our clients who I said highest paying clients. And every once in a while, they'll let us know, hey, we're trying something new. And they won't necessarily try it with us. They'll like some agency will swoop in and say, hey, we've got this new thing. And like, but they're cool and they let us know, and that's great. But it's awesome where like when they'll come back to us and be like, we should have just gone with you. And, and often they'll come back and say, okay, we tried it with them, but we know you'll do a better job. So, it's just so it's just kind of an interesting concept.
I was going to ask you like how many so these are a couple other questions we often ask is like well, I guess talk about this one, like how many of your churn customers or come back, uh churn retention or whatever you want to call it, do you know, like, on your book of business?
I think, people who separate from us pretty much separate from us. I don't think they come back. And, you know, a lot of, I'll tell you, some of the biggest reasons that people left in 2022 was due to a change in management. Either a company was bought out or it's because new management came in. And it could be that we're doing the best job in the world, but because that new person who comes in has another relationship, they want to do it differently, then we kind of get pushed out. So with
That's very
that, it's,
yeah.
you know, so I'll tell you what's cool though is, let's say an individual who I used to work with at company A, and then they move to company B, we have had that multiple times where like we've been the agency of individuals who've moved from different areas, and we've had wonderful opportunities in that way.
Yeah, you want to be the I've got a guy, and you want to be the guy, yeah, as the saying goes. And then where do you find clients? This is another key question. Like, where is your pipeline coming from?
Yeah, so currently our pipeline is primarily referral based, which is great, but it's also not the most secure. but it is, but it's pretty powerful. Like I said, to be able to grow a business year over year, primarily based on referrals, is amazing. And I think it goes to the point of treating people respectfully, doing a good job, and moving from there. The initiative this year is we've started a podcast, sponsored by the agency called the Digital Marketing Mentor. And our goal this year is to try to get more content out there and get our name a little bit more out there, a little more proactive. So even then, that's not like running ads. It's more of an organic strategy. But, we're trying to not just sit on our laurels, but go ahead and push ourselves a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, um, referrals are nice, actually nice, stable because they never really go away because people love you. But it's interesting. You have a 50% turnaway rate, even with referrals. That's like it means you must be doing really good work. So many
We
inbound.
are, Sunir. We are.
Yeah.
If you're looking
Uh,
for an agency,
well,
you
I should
just
call you
speak to us.
professor. I mean, that's what you are. The okay. So given that, so you restructured your company internally into what, three groups? Is that right?
Yeah, so we have three primary groups. We have three departments. So the SEO department, paid social, and paid search.
Was this your idea, or was this the CEO recommending?
No, actually, that's always been my idea.
Okay, and then how do you control the profitability of a project going through? Like, do you have SOPs? Like, how does this? How do you know? Like, if you sell a SEO product, SEO is like one of the most variable costs. It could be projects, right? So how do you? I'm always interested in how people control profitability
Well,
in a project like that.
with SEO, even though we do have a certain amount of hours that we allocate. Not always are we showing that to the client, but we do. So it's a combination of deliverables and hours, and and some of it is just financial reporting. It's like, you know, key is tracking your hours. So we're
Mm.
very, 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 very strict about tracking hours, and therefore it's really about, okay, looking at those hours, looking at how much you spend, and seeing, you know was that a profitable project or not.
Do you go underwater occasionally, or
I mean, on certain projects you may, but remember, due to the fact that we're in a retainer sort of model, so sometimes it's okay to be underwater for a month or two, knowing that you're going to be okay in month 3 and 4.
Right. Right. And what are you using for time tracking? I'm always curious about these kind of micro details.
Sure. So we use Teamwork, which is a project management
Yeah,
system.
yeah.
It's not just a time tracker; it's also a task management. There are a bunch of them out there. It's just something that I found as fitting my style back in 2017, and we've been using it ever since.
Teamwork's a great product. I've used it. It's fantastic. Um, okay, so the so like you were mentioning earlier that one of the advantages. So like one of this is the counter argument, and but you took a different approach. There was another agency that we was really interesting. There's a bunch of them actually on the podcast. We had all in a row, all with the same strategy: niching down and focusing, because the clients can't recommend something that they don't have a single line for. And it was Blue Vector, Payush. He gave me this point: like, would you rather hire your all inclusive marketing company to make a video for you, or would you like to hire the best video production studio in India? You know, it's like, well, I'd like to hire the best. And so he ended up breaking his agency down into several different agencies, all with their own brand and their own P&L, and but they pass clients back and forth. And then Benny Rubin from Senders, he went from doing cold outreach to email deliverability only, because that's a single pane. But you've taken a different approach and you found it working for you. So tell us the contrasting strategy, because either strategy could work, but we haven't had a strong argument for uh, the AIM strategy, all inclusive marketing.
Yeah. So first of all, um, I look at it as like a portfolio strategy. So just like when you're going to go ahead and invest in the stock market, you're not going to put all your money in Tesla because you don't know what's going to happen. The same thing with running a digital marketing agency. By me having these different departments and people have different needs. Sometimes people just want SEO. Sometimes they want paid search. It's weird how it like goes in waves. So if I just did SEO, what happens if those things didn't come through? What would I do? Or let's say we lost clients in one or the other. So by having this balanced approach, it's it's not even about like only find clients you're going to take all three, but it's also about just having that, just being able to strategize when things do get quiet in one area, another area can help. Now, I know people could argue and say, okay, but you know what, Danny, if you just had SEO, that's you'd focus on that and you'd push it more, and those are the leads that you're going to get. Maybe that's it's a possibility, but I think for me, having this balanced approach works. Um, Once again, we do find clients, as much as there are clients who want to have people, the best, let's imagine like a furniture store. They want to have the best PPC, company that's only done furniture. But there are, on the other hand, there are certain businesses that want to work with an agency that does everything or that does multiple things because they have a better understanding of how can you take your SEO and your paid search and put it together. And the way that I actually pitch it is that what's amazing for us is because we're involved in multiple industries, we learn different things and we can bring a fresh perspective. For someone who's like just working in one area, they're kind of blindsided by things and may not be able to have new strategies or kind of tell what's going on out there. So it provides us with a unique perspective, and it's allowed us to win contracts where we go up against the specialist agencies, but because we're like more broad and we have a bigger perspective, people actually appreciate that.
That's interesting. Um, let's just talk about operationally. So you have three different teams, and if one's slow and the other one's fast, like SEO is slow and PPC is fast this quarter or whatever, does that mean like you have like some staff on the bench? Like, do you have a bench rate?
Thank God, when I say slow doesn't mean that like they've got nothing to do. It means that no new projects are coming in. So thank God, like we have work in all three divisions because we're retainer based. It's more about new projects coming in that I'm referring to.
And do you always have, is your retainers in any given group covering payroll at any given time? Like, what does that mean when you don't have a new project coming in? What's the financial cost or risk?
Yeah, that's so we're actually working on this year. One of our goals is to have a P&L for each different department,
Hmm.
and to better understand how each department works, and also give some more goals towards the department heads. So I don't have a perfect understanding of the exact revenue to to labor, um, you know model, but it's something that we're definitely working on, and looking to do. But one thing that's important is, just like in Google Ads or in anything, there's like the attribution model. you know um, who gets the credit? Is it the guy who, is it because he clicked on social media first, Google Ads second, organic third? Who gets it? Is it the first guy, the last guy, everyone equal? So similar in my situation, it's like, is the reason we have that Google Ads project, is it because of Google Ads, or is it because we also have the social media? So maybe the social media should get a little bit of credit of that revenue as well. So we also have to think a little bit about, if we're going to go down that path, we need to think a little bit about what does our attribution model look like, rather than just a pure, last click attribution.
Yeah, I am fascinated because I mean a lot of agencies are AIM, and there for a while there's a line that if you're an all inclusive marketing, you're AIM, you have no aim in a way. Like, what are you? But on the other hand, there's a reason why most are like this way. Um, but by the way, like the Blue Vector version of Agency Connect, the pod episode, is interesting because they didn't get rid of the staff. They just made micro brands, like brands around each department, and let them each sell if they have their own P&L, and then they pass the clients back and forth anyway. That's an interesting strategy. Like, you can
And
make a
Sunir, I
brand.
do have a footnote.
Yeah,
A footnote is that as we move away from referrals and trying to see what are we going to be doing more proactively, some of our thoughts are, do we go ahead and actually niche down in one area, not the whole agency, but maybe we create like something that overall, like the best thing that we're good at, don't decompose what we have, but then brand it, market it in a way, and see how that goes. So I am thinking about that, but I wouldn't, that is not to exclude of what we've built, but it's more like, okay, if we're looking for something else to balance the equation even more, maybe that's the way that we're going to go.
yeah, it's always possible to make another brand landing page and marketing campaign and see how it goes without getting rid of the core brand. It's always, I'm curious, like, if it actually pans out. It seems to be working for people who do something like that. Yeah, even you keep all the staff, but it's easier for the customers apparently to digest a simple message than it is to like make up their own message. That's the argument.
Yeah, and most of the agency podcasts that you listen to is all about niching, so there's definitely something there.
Yep. Um, okay. One thing I should ask you is, like, from this experience of going through fractional COO, like, what was like the biggest lesson you would take to getting sustainable margins and profitability, like that you might want to pay it forward to another agency owner?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson that I learned is that, yes, you need to be open to new ideas and changes, even things that you think are impossible. You have to believe are possible. On the other hand, there are certain soul things about an agency that you don't want to, no matter what anyone is coming from the outside is telling you, there are certain things that you need to stand by strong. Like, if you believe, because I think culture is really important. And there's like a fine line between when you come in and suddenly there's this big change that could affect what that culture is. And so it's a little bit of a dance that you have to play, so that you can make change, but not sacrificing the culture that you built. And I think this occurs even more when agencies are growing. And, the culture of a 4-person agency is very different than a 20-person agency. So how can you still maintain something like that while also putting systems and processes and changing things?
I like to think of culture as being another aspect of love. So if you approach your staff with a caring heart, you can be open and transparent of it being a mistakes will be happening. But if you care about them and they'll care about you, then you could work through it together. It's my attitude personally. I mean, what else is culture but the people? I mean, it's a set of relationships, right? Danny, you're amazing, Professor Danny Gavin. Tell us how to find you and your podcast and your agency on the interwebs and tubes.
Perfect. So you can find Optidge at optidge.com. Best place to find me is on LinkedIn, and you can get there by going to dannygavin.me. And then the new podcast that is out is The Digital Marketing Mentor, which is found on Apple, Spotify, and all those great places. You can get to us also through the web via thedmmentor.com.
Amazing. And for all those who got through this podcast and are thirsty, come join us, agencycocktails.com. We buy drinks, we ship them to wherever you are, and we talk about the sustainability trap with other agency folks because someone needs to talk about it. So come join. We have a great Slack group. We have a great drinking group. All right. Thank you so much, Danny. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you, Sunir.
For more great insights on partnerships and software, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.